Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Thursday, August 10th. We are here live. It is a free-for-all. The schedule for today, this first hour, anything goes. Phone lines are open right now. Jump in and join us. 855-950-3835. I've got some things I can talk about, a couple lessons maybe. And we'll get to your calls and questions. Then we'll head on into Rolling Toe for an hour here, and then we'll jump over to Twitter for another free-for-all in a Twitter X space, whatever we're calling it these days. I don't know how long it's going to take us to stop saying Twitter and tweets. And I don't know, we're supposed to say X, and I'm not sure yet. So we'll see. I think I just confirmed, as I'm listening to myself, I sound just about the same way I feel this morning. It's not that bad, but I can tell I sound a little nasally. There's a reason for that. So I have, I should just start talking about this now. If you want to jump in, pick up the phone, join me. I don't think I've done one this year, but last year I did a segment, not really a segment, maybe just an open that I would call Lessons from the Garden. And I haven't done one of those in a while. So I've been thinking about one, and I have one. But then I also learned a lesson yesterday, maybe a big lesson for me, from the water. So now I have two segments, Lessons from the Garden and Lessons from the Water. And I think for health-wise reasons, I've picked two very good hobbies. It seems to me like the muscles I need to work out on the water are completely different from what happens in the garden, and I really get a good workout doing both. But I think I'll do the lesson from the water, because this is kind of a big one for me. So it's probably an ego thing or something. I've said that I'm really frustrated with this whole foil. It's not so much the wing part of wing foiling, it's the foil part of wing foiling that's making me a little crazy. And I'm just so stuck on do it myself, teach myself. I guess I've just always been this way. And I wanted this to be easier. I thought it was going to be easier because of how many things I've done like this my whole life. And I've always been really good at it. And I thought, okay, once I figure out the wing part of this, I'll be off and running. The rest is just like standing on something in the water. I've been doing that since I was a kid. So I played around with the wing on the land just to make sure when I get down in the water, I'm going to be good at this. And this foil thing is just making me crazy. I want to learn it. I don't want it to take, 8 tries or 8 days out on the water. I just want to get out there and learn it. So I've got all these cool apps that give me up to the minute wind conditions everywhere in the gorge. The apps are just for windsurfing and wind sports. And so I'm obsessed over the apps, and every day I'm looking at it and watching the predictions. And am I going to go today? And if it isn't perfect, I don't go, because I keep thinking I want a perfect day and one more day out on the water, and I'll just get this. I know I will. So Lisa's kind of been quietly in the background saying, why don't you just go? And, I'm obsessing over the apps and talking about the wind and the directions, and, well, you don't understand. And every once in a while she'll say, why don't you just go? So yesterday, I wasn't even thinking about going because the wind predictions were goofy. And when I got off the air yesterday, she said, why don't you go out on the water today? And I said, no, I can't go and I had all these reasons. And she kind of just said, why don't you just go? And I thought, you're right. Why don't I just go? So I did. And I had a great day out on the water. And it turned out to be some really good wind conditions, even though nobody was predicting that. And in fact, at one point in this area where kind of all the beginners spend all their time, we call it the hook, I was the only one out there. Usually there's like 30 people out there and you're kind of dodging each other. And One point I looked around, I was the only one out there because the conditions had kind of died down a little bit and everybody thought, all right, it's late in the day. Nobody was predicting any good wind. And I had been kind of doing my own thing and I looked around and nobody else was out and the wind was pretty dead. And I thought, well, I guess I'm just done. I might as well go in. Then I thought, why am I wasting all this time just waiting for the perfect wind? I'm just sitting out here in the water. And a lot of times I won't even sit in the water. I should. I'll go back to a place where maybe the water's chest deep so I can stand there and wait for the perfect wind. Why am I waiting for everything to be perfect? Because I don't want to take 200 tries to do this. I want to get it in 100. It's kind of, I guess, my mindset on this. But it's really working against me because I'm just not getting enough tries. So I started changing. I thought, no, I'm not going to go in. I've still got daylight. I'm already out here. It's a beautiful day. What if I just learn how to stand on the board without even moving? What if I could get that good? And that's not an easy thing to do. And the smaller your board is, the harder that is. And I have a fairly small board for a beginner. And as soon as I can, I'll go to a smaller and smaller board. So I thought, what if I could really just get that good at balancing on the board? And if I get that good at just standing there in the water without moving, what if I could learn how to start walking around on the board and shifting my feet like I know I'm going to have to learn at some point? Why don't I just learn that while I'm sitting here? And if the wind picks up, then I'll be here and I'll get a couple more shots. And so I started playing around with that. But it happened because of something else I had heard. When we were out there in the water and there was a bunch of people still, when I got out there yesterday, there are instructors out there working with people. So you can hire somebody and they come out in the water and work with you. Some of them have headsets in the helmet so they can talk to you even when you're, 100 yards away from them. And everybody was kind of waiting for the wind to pick up. And I was listening to him give somebody some advice. And it was just two simple things. And it clicked with me. And I thought, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And he's explaining why it's so wrong and why you're still struggling. And I thought, yep, that's exactly what I'm doing. So the big lesson here, I learned a lot of things. I learned, I should be using my time better out there on the water. But the really big lesson, then I did learn a couple tips and tricks on the board and the wing that's going to help. But the big lesson is I really suck at taking advice. I wonder why that is. I give advice all day long. You would think I would be a little better at taking it. I don't know. I have this thing about I just need to learn this myself, which is fine, but that doesn't mean I can't take some advice. Why not just go? That's what Lisa kept saying. Why not just go? So I did, and I had a blast, and I learned a lot. So that is my lesson from the water today. I think I'm going to go through my lesson from the garden, too. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow. Yeah, I think I'll save that one for tomorrow. Jump in and join me. If you've got a lesson about anything, if you've got a question, if you've got some advice, I guess I'll start taking more advice. I should get better at that. It was just kind of funny. A simple thing. Why not just go? And then just a couple little tips on the way I was standing on the board and the way my shoulders were. And yep, that's exactly what I've been fighting with. Really, what I should do is, now that I'm at the point that I'm at, there are instructors right there every day. I should really just pay somebody and say, just work with me until I get up on the foil. That's probably what I should. Now, here's what I decided to do. Based on the lesson that I learned, I decided I'm going to go to the other extreme. Of course I am. What else would I do? Instead of waiting for the perfect conditions, I am not even going to look outside to see if the wind is blowing. I'm not going to open any apps. I am just going down to the water every day, starting today. Whenever I decide to quit working today, I'm just going to the water. If there's no wind, I'm going to practice standing on my board and walking on my board and doing headstands on my board. And if there's wind, then I'll ride it. So I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum. What else would I do? Let's go to the phones. We're going to go to New Jersey. Todd, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, how are you? Hey, before I go to my two questions, I'm a surfer in Costa Rica. I never foiled before. But based on what you just said about your foil, I've seen guys using the foil board without the wind, the sail.
Right.
Just by pumping the legs up and down.
Right.
Can you do the same thing on your board?
I've seen people on the river doing it, yes. I've seen a couple different things. You'll see they'll use the wing to get up on the foil, they'll play around, and once in a while they'll just let the foil plane out behind them. You just hold it in your hand behind you, and it does nothing. And then and they'll be up on the foil. If they're waves, you can use the wave energy to keep moving. And if they kind of run out of energy, I'll see them. They can just pump the foil and get moving again. And then I've even seen guys playing around with, and I know this sounds crazy, but I watched this guy one day. He set his board. We were on the shore was just all rocks, and there were just a couple paths to follow to get down into the water. And he was over where the rocks were like 10 feet above the water, and he was setting his board. It was probably about 6 feet. He was setting his board in the water, angled against, I don't even remember how he was doing it, and jumping to land on the board and then pumping. And he was just going to go with no wing, no nothing. And he was starting to get it. So I guess if you can just get enough energy going, you can keep it going without a wing.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going, because when I go surfing down in Costa Rica, that's what they do. They use a paddle for a paddle board. You know, once they get enough the speed, they don't use the paddle anymore, and they just use the energy of the wave and use their feet by pumping their feet up and down. And once they get enough speed, then you got control of the foil board.
Yeah. So
I think from my point of view, that's what you should do. Learn how to play with the board without the sail, because I think you're going too hard on yourself. You're trying to learn two things at the same time.
Well, the most common reason I crash is because I catch the wind wrong in the wing, and it just pulls me right off the board. So you're right. I'm trying. I don't have the wing right into the wind, and I'm thinking more about my feet and my weight on the board, and then I get pulled off. So there's a lot going on, and I think all of my instincts from water skiing, slalom skiing, wakeboarding, I think they're all backwards from this foil. It feels like I'm fighting my instincts, like I'm doing the exact wrong thing. Like when I should be on my forward foot, I'm on my back foot. And it's really frustrating. One of the things I'm learning that is just insane, and it's why this is even possible, that we can talk about just pumping and using energy from even just little waves, and we can actually keep this board and all of our weight out of the water. Think about how much force that takes. And we can still move around. And I kept thinking, why is this possible all of a sudden? And this foil thing is taking over everything in the water. Ferries, boats, the World Cup, yacht racing stuff. And they're setting all kinds of crazy records. Here's what it is, and this is one of the lessons I'm fighting against. In all the ways I've done things on the water, it's either been behind a boat or in a cable system that is very consistent. It's nice and steady. The pole stays the same. Now I'm dealing with these crazy winds that are constantly changing. And that's But here's the other thing, and I just realized this yesterday. As a surfer, you get this. You understand how much drag there is on your board, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the bigger the board, the more the drag. But we need a big board to get started because all we're using is some wind power. So this board is just dragging and dragging and dragging, and I don't have boots on, so I'm trying not to get pulled off the board, and I'm fighting this wind, and all of a sudden, and it happens without you even realizing it, you come up on the foil, and this is where everything goes to hell. And I realized what's happening. It feels like I go from maybe about 12 miles an hour dragging through the water to about 30 miles an hour in a half a second when I come up on that foil. And it's that transition that I can't adjust to, but it tells me what's happening. That foil, they have got the water resistance down to almost nothing.
Yes, you got to get it up there. Yep. Yeah, you got to learn how to pump with your feet and your body to get it above the water enough so you can gain speed on it.
Yeah, the other trick when there's not enough wind, and if you watch them do it, they do it at the same time. They'll pump the board with their legs, and they'll scoop the wind with the wing. And you have to do it at the same time. So it's kind of like walking and chewing gum, and sometimes I'm challenged that way.
All right. Here's my first thought. My two-part questions are basically the same thing. Mr. Kevin, how do I go about to check myself in my home for mold?
There are several good mold testing kits, and I should know the name of them because I have one still in the house here. Maybe Lisa is listening and she'll send me the name. We've used a couple. I've tested the RV for mold a couple times because we had mold in the ceiling confirmed. And I even think I got a mold contamination from when I worked on it because, just put on a simple paper mask and I was in there all day tearing out, molding, ceiling insulation. And so then I would test it and then I would wait and I would retest it. So I tried a couple different companies and then recently Lisa wanted to test the house. So she did some research and the company she found was really, really good. So if I don't get it here from her in a little bit, I will remember to post it up on the tribes, and I'll try to put a note so I talk about it tomorrow. The other reason I sound so nasally today was another lesson from the water. For some reason, every time I fall, I'm doing either one of two things. I'm either landing in my wing, which is just not a good way to land, and I almost blew out a knee yesterday doing that. Or for some reason, I must be landing in a way I get pure water injection right up my nose, and I can feel I'm really nasally today.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think you should forget about the wind for a while and just try to maneuver the board by itself, even with the paddle, so you can get the hang of it, of how to stand up on the board, how to use the waves on the river, even the currents of the river. If you're in the river, if you go down the river, the current is got to go somewhere. So if you use that current, it's going to give you enough speed and power for you to foil on that.
Well, yes and no, because our best days and most of our days in the summer, the reason the wind sports are so good here, not only do we have crazy winds, but they oppose the river. So the river is flowing towards the west and the wind is blowing towards the east, and that's why we get such crazy good conditions. But you are much more likely to get blown with the wind, not taken down with the current.
Gotcha. All right. How about myself? Do I do a blood test or urine test for mold to test it myself?
There are several different ways to test this. I believe blood is the most accurate on some of these. And there are several different things we can test for. We can test for molds, we can test for heavy metals, we can test for environmental toxins. Were you listening to the show yesterday by chance?
Yeah, that's where I got my wondering from. Yeah, yes, sir.
So
always, I'm always there.
Yeah, good. That's just. I would really recommend work with Dr. Wolfson on his process for testing. It's the most complete. And to me, if we get to the point where we think we need that kind of testing, then we might as well just do it right the first time, get it all done, and then you can analyze it all together.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it because I've been living in the basement for 15 years, and it's pretty, the humidity there is pretty high. I've been using humidifiers and plants just to fight all that, but I bet you I got something. I'm a carnivore. I've been carnivore for 2 years.
Good. You know, when you look at a lot of people who have become, the very well-known people in this health segment, whether they're practitioners or, they created products, or, people like Mark Sisson who created Primal Kitchen, many of them, in fact, it seems to me almost all of them, I've met a lot of them, I've interviewed a lot of them, I've had them on the show, read their books. Almost everyone, I'm trying to think of an exception, and I can't think of one yet, came to this because they had health issues. And they had health issues that nobody was fixing. They were just getting worse. And some of these people were doctors when they started having the health issues. They couldn't figure it out. The medical system couldn't figure it out. And they, turned to food, and they got this figured out. That is just so common. And the one guy I will tell you, if you haven't read his books or if you don't follow what he does, Dave Asprey of Bulletproof, he really believes his biggest health issue his whole life has been mold. He is really, really big on the whole mold issue. It's why he was really the first coffee on the planet that ever talked about being mold toxin free, that it was tested for mold toxins. Now I bet I could find 30 coffee brands at least that claim that and do that, but he was the first. So he's really big on that whole mold toxin issue.
Well, look for his book. Are there symptoms with the people that have?
The problem is there are dozens of symptoms, and they almost always look like something else.
All right, I'm going to investigate. I'm going to get a hold of Mr. Wolfson. I might run into him in Costa Rica.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Mr. Kevin, that's all I have. Thank you very much. I'm going to try to find that book, and then I'll look for the name of that mold company on later on the website.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. All right. We've got lines open. It is a free-for-all. We've got about 30 minutes left, so jump in and join me. 855-950-3835. I wonder if I sound as bad to everybody else as I do in my own head right now. Ooh, I almost dropped myself. Let's go to California. I need to wake up today. Don, welcome to the program.
Hey, good afternoon, Kevin. I need to wake up too. I literally just rolled out of the sleeper so I can catch you.
I'm almost thinking maybe I should go back to bed after this instead of trying to wake up. I don't know.
Well, listen, Kevin, last time we talked was on July 10th, and I had got to go up to the shops in Michigan and Pennsylvania and get my Christmas list going.
Oh, nice.
And on my fleet truck, remember I had that conversation with you, and I did everything that Bruce recommended except for the Murphy's oil soap cleaning the interior. But literally, and I say I didn't spend the money yet on what Leroy recommended on the sensors that could have on hand in case they wear out and you get a road call, and but I haven't done that part. But torsional damper, the OPS, everything. I just sent Angie over, and she's going to forward it to you. A couple of my invoices there from the two providers, and Kevin, I'm not sure if something I didn't fully understand the impact that oil could have on your fuel mileage. I was going back through overnight when I was driving last night, listening to some of the archive programs, and you had a conversation with a caller about putting on an OPS system a week or so ago, and what he could do for mileage, or maybe in using a synthetic. The service manager where I had the diesel clean done recommended that I go with a full synthetic, and because our truck is a 680,000 mile truck when we got it, we're up to about close to 735, 740 now, and he recommended, because team truck and high mileage, he said you probably want to go with a full synthetic. It's not a lot more, and so I did. But I'm wondering if the weight that I've done has cost me some fuel mileage. It looks like just. I didn't do a screenshot before I had the work done, and since then, and I haven't really went into the browser on a PC to the Gauges app and altered the 30, 60, 90 and looked at comparisons there. And I said, I wonder if Kevin can just look at it right there on screen if I call in. And Angie said she thinks you can do that. But I've lost about a mile or a mile and a half per gallon, and we're running pretty hard out here. And I was like, I don't know. I thought you could look at those two invoices and say, here's where this might have had an impact on you. I got the oil that I ended up was with a T6 Shell full synthetic. It's a 5W40. So I don't know.
Yeah,
we run a combination of every.
So let's just talk about that whole issue, because it's interesting. And when you say, how much of an impact oil could have on fuel economy, and this is another one of those lessons when we hear this phrase, well, if you really knew what you were talking about, if that really worked, the OEMs would be doing that. And it's just not true. It's never true. Almost all of these innovations will at least be hutched on by the aftermarket first. We've been proving this, and this is another area. I and Joel did it. The people who really focused on fuel economy way back when in the 90s was one of the first people to put Mobil Mobil 1 back then, in a truck. Nobody was doing that. And people said I was an idiot to even think about putting synthetic oil in a diesel. What are you, crazy? No, it makes sense. We're trying to get the best fuel economy we can. And they went through the seals won't hold up, and you'll leak so much oil, and all them, and you can't mix the two. What's going to happen if you can't get a gallon of synthetic? It was all wrong. None of that turned out to be true, and we were on the right track. Synthetic has less resistance in the engine than conventional oils do, and that was the point. And even with less resistance, it has better protection. There's a double benefit to synthetic oil, and everybody knew that, but for some reason they were just freaked out about putting it in a diesel. And we started doing that really early. And then we started talking about, why can't we use 30 weight oils instead of 40 weight oils? Because the lighter weight the oil, the less resistance inside the engine, the less lost energy, the better fuel economy. But there were no 30 weight oils that met the API classifications for these engines. So it was like we couldn't even experiment with it. We talked about it all the time. And now the preferred oil in almost every new engine, if not every new engine, is a 30 weight full synthetic. It's a recommended oil now. We've been working with that concept for 20 years.
Wow. Well, the service manager there had recommended the 5W40, so I don't know why. I was really hoping to get
What year was the? What year is this engine?
150,000 out of that oil. Pardon me.
What year is this engine?
So it is a 2019
So,
Cascadia.
do you have your owner's manual?
When I set it up initially, I do. Yes.
Look in the owner's manual. Somewhere there is the recommended oil. And I would be curious. I don't think it's what this service manager recommended for you. Like I'm almost positive you're going to see that in the oil that it recommends is going to be a 30 weight, and it's possibly going to be a synthetic, or they'll at least talk about that. But I have a feeling he did not give you the recommendation that's right in the owner's manual.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, and I don't know if all of it's from that. That's why I wanted you to maybe to be able to see my two invoices from two shops there. But I had all the I'm calling them underpinnings done with suspension to really feel good about wheel bearings and axles and fluids and everything underneath. And I shot you a picture of that. And I thought, I wonder if the tightening down of bearings and stuff there might have caused a little, it's a fleet truck. I got 10.2 miles per gallon driving it up to the first shop,
So here's what's happening. I'm going to put your mind at ease. I'm not even going to look at the invoices because I know exactly what's happening.
Okay.
And have you ever, do you listen to the health show a lot?
Not as much as the mechanic shows and just the open line shows.
If you listen to the health enough, you eventually will hear me tell somebody, throw your damn scale away. Stop looking at the scale. Now, that might sound crazy coming from somebody who constantly pounds into your head, you have to know your fuel mileage. You have to know your fuel mileage. You have to work on your fuel mileage. But there's a point where we can work against ourselves. And it's that people will call me and they'll be, oh my God, I gained 3 pounds since yesterday. And I'm like, who cares? You'll probably lose 3 pounds by tomorrow. It happens all the time. We have these big, crazy variations. It's like the stock market. When I used to be a financial planner, it would make me crazy. People would call me, oh my God, did you see what happened to my portfolio yesterday? It went down. Stop looking at it. I would really counsel my people to stop getting their statement in the mail. I would tell them, don't do that. Just tell them, you can just check the box, tell them you don't want to mail it. We can save a couple trees. Stop looking at your statement every month. This is how the stock market works. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. But if we look at it over the long history, it started down at the bottom left and it keeps going up. But you can't keep looking at these little variations. We can't do it with our money. We can't do it with our health and our weight. And even on our fuel mileage, we can get too obsessive. You've really only bobtailed this truck. And I've seen bobtail swings of 3 miles to the gallon. I bobtailed one way and got 12 miles to the gallon, and I went...
No. I didn't bobtail it, Kevin. I pulled my trailer so I wouldn't lose my trailer with Landstar.
I thought you
stay up under it.
Did you say you bobtailed or no? Did you say deadhead?
No. I deadheaded, but I kept my trailer under me. It was empty.
So you got 10 to empty.
I got 10 empty,
okay.
And then I had the week before I was able to go up there. I got a 9.4 or 9.2 coming from California and South Carolina. So.
Well, see, and that's kind of, you got the 9-something, then it jumped way up to 10-something, and you didn't call me in a panic then because it was going up. My point, though, is well, no, just hold on. Let's not argue the details because this isn't about the details. It's about a mindset.
Right.
So I want you to just take a step back, take a deep breath, and don't try to justify each little detail because that's not the point here. The point is I want to help you get into a different mindset where we do hyper focus on details sometimes. But we also have to have this, we have to understand the nature of this fuel mileage stuff. It is, I will say, it is impossible to do with one truck, one driver in an over-the-road operation where it's a different load, it's a different terrain, it's different weather. You cannot accurately really prove some of these fuel mileage numbers. We just can't. We just have to be real about that.
Well,
we have to depend on other testing. We've got, when I had 3 trucks yesterday on the health show, I think I talked about I was on the space yesterday, double-blind placebo-controlled testing. And I used to actually do that in fuel mileage testing. I would have 2 trucks that I made a change to. I would have a 3rd truck that we wouldn't make the change to, and all 3 trucks did the same thing every day within 30 minutes of each other. They all ran the same route out and back. That allowed me to have 2 trucks to double verify what was happening, and 1 truck to say, well, we didn't do anything. And here's what happened sometimes. We'd look at the 2 trucks that we made a change to, and we'd go, oh, look, we're up 0.3. And that's kind of our minimum. You know, if we get 0.3, that's a real thing going on here. We think, we got 0.3. Well, guess what happened when we looked at the other truck, what we call the control truck?
Right.
It was up 0.3. Well, wait a minute. How? We didn't do anything to this truck. That's why you have a control. That's why that's the gold standard in medical testing. If it's done right, it controls a lot of these variables and our mindset. That's all. With double blind, we're trying to make sure people aren't overthinking this and seeing results that aren't really there. That's the whole point of double blind, is to get rid of that placebo effect. So I want you to be hyper-focused on details, but I want you to have this big picture mindset that says, I can't try to analyze every single time my fuel mileage changes from tank to tank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm yeah, and I don't. That's why I wanted you to see have my truck number there that Angie could send over to you. See what's kind of happening there. Is they were. And I didn't do
here's
look
another,
at them and screenshot the 30 and 60 and 90.
Here's another reason. I know you want me to go look at that, and I'm not going to. That one reason is I want you to focus
Kevin,
on something different. But okay,
let me interrupt.
Go ahead.
All right. It's not a solo truck either. We're running through 120 gallons of fuel a day. I mean, we're running it hard.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what that does. So, I was just about to say there are so many variables that we have to look big picture to try to smooth out those variables. And what you just told me threw in another huge variable: 2 different drivers. Drivers can be 30% of fuel economy. Now, this becomes more difficult if we start watching tank to tank, because is it very likely that you ran out half the tank or 3/4 and then she ran out 25% or 42%? So even that variable is variable when we're trying to track fuel mileage. So think of all the endless possibilities here. So when we say, look at all this stuff, try to figure out what work they did. Well, even if I were to stare at it all day long, I might say, well, maybe the wheel bearings, but we only see a couple percent. I mean, we know we want to get in there and get wheel bearings set perfect, but we know it's not that huge of an effect. It's a really tough thing to measure. And that's what all of this is. So not only are there a ton of variables in the whole picture of the truck, then there's the variable of all the work being done all at the same time.
Okay.
What if I found
Okay.
two?
Well, I mean,
what if I found two things in there that were possibly the problem? Which one? Or maybe it was a little bit of both. But how would we know? So it again.
Well,
we hyper focus on details, but we can't let that saying you can't see the forest for the trees. That's what that saying was all about. This is like
Right.
a life lesson here. So if I keep pushing back, and there's a big lesson here. I've often talked about people tend to be big picture thinkers or detail thinkers, and Lisa and I are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. I am so big picture that she can't imagine what I'm imagining. She can't fathom that I could be imagining things like that sometimes. I can't figure out how she can be so good at all of this detail stuff and so much of it. She manages, 42 different vendors, and she manages all of our employees, and she's got lists, and she's so organized, and it makes me insane to even think about it. But I make her crazy
Which
when
generally makes a good match.
as long as you can make it work without driving each other crazy. And we're running a business together, a life together. So there are a lot of challenges there. But you're right; it's what's helped us succeed. When we can keep that working, it's what helps us succeed. And we've really built our company based on strengths and weaknesses, and making sure we don't just hire people exactly like us. There's a tendency a lot of times to want to work with or hire people exactly like yourself. I seek out the opposite. And I hate conflict, but I realize everything works better if you can get all those different approaches. So one of the other things I've talked about, and it's something very rare, and when I see it, the people are always really successful. And the best example of somebody I got to work very closely with for a long time and really experience this and watch it was Todd Amon. And Todd was the guy that started ATBS. And just the way he did it was incredible. And Todd approached me in the first couple of months that he started that business, because it was the business I was in at the time, but doing accounting for owner-operators. And I was giving a seminar. And in the seminar, I mentioned that I was no longer going to take new tax clients or accounting clients. I had a big base, and I wanted to move into financial planning. And I had even become a certified financial planner. And Todd heard that, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, I've got an idea." He said, "I'm just starting up the same company that you run, basically." And he said, "I see you really aren't looking for new clients." He said, "I'm sure you're going to get a lot of people that want to be your client. Send them our way, and we'll work with you, and we'll send our clients to you for financial planning and retirement planning." I said, "Perfect. That's awesome." And I didn't know a whole lot about Todd at the time. Todd came a third generation family run trucking company out of Colorado, a very well-known name. His grandfather started that. They sold it for like $34 million or something. Todd had lots and lots of money. Him and two brothers were very, very active in the company from, the time they were kids. Even though Todd had all that money, he started this accounting company basically the same way I did. And I started it my way because I was broke. He started in his own basement. He did hire just one employee, and he bought an old RV that kind of looked like the Partridge Family bus, and he drove around to fleets and convinced them to offer his accounting services for their owner operators. And I just thought that was incredible to do it that way. He could have thrown $1 million at it if he wanted. I mean, he had those kind of resources, and he built that company from scratch as though he had no money. And when I actually sold my accounting company to him, years and years after that. And we had become friends before that. And then we were friendly competitors again. And, we would go to events together and hang out. And finally, they had been bugging me to come work for them for years. And finally I said, all right, look, buy my company. I'll come out, I'll work with you. I'll see how it goes. I tried it for a year, realized no matter how sweet the deal was, and boy, did they make me a sweet deal. I just can't work for somebody else. And they couldn't have made it better. I mean, they really said, do whatever you want. Act like you work for yourself. Just say you work for us is kind of what they were saying. And that just didn't feel right.
Right.
I just couldn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I had a lot of fun that year. It was the year they gave me a cabin up in the mountains to live in, and built me a studio in their office building. It was a fun year. I had a lot of fun doing it, but I just realized I just can't work for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to run those things by you. We're going to keep watching and evaluating and using all the tools we got to see. I was just wondering, since I've read 2 or 3 posts in different places on Facebook about the oil and the the service manager recommended that I use a 5W30 following the cleaning that was done, because that oil had to be changed. And the oil I went in there with had 70,000 miles on it, and it was a 30 weight Chevron 30 weight.
Because that's what's recommended.
Right, and the oil sample had come back low on base. I'd sampled it twice, and it came back low on base. I sampled it once incorrectly, the second time correctly, and then at the truck show over at the booth right there where Joel was at, the guy that was running that booth, I forget what his name is, but he came over with his calculator and he said, you need 2 quarts of base. I put that in there. I really probably could have got by with 1 quart of base, but it brought the oil sample back to perfection. Good. But again, that was on the 30 weight oil. So maybe I have to learn the lesson and have another service done to get back to the 30 weight. And is it, what's a 30 weight full synthetic that you can find at the TA Petros or wherever on the shelf that's a full synthetic?
I think somebody just told me within the last couple of weeks that Rotella now has one. And I know that was kind of an issue for a while. So I have to believe if Rotella has one, Rotella has the best distribution in the country.
And Shell Rotella, correct? Is that the same thing?
Yep, Shell Rotella, right.
Yeah, that what they put into the truck is T6 5W40.
Right. Now I believe somebody told me that there is now a 530 T6. So the T6 is just telling you that it's really, that's their designation for full synthetic.
Okay. So it can be different weights.
Correct.
But with
so
the T6 number
is right. Okay. Is telling you that it's a full synthetic, but then you also have to check the weight. And I believe somebody and the way they said it was they haven't had one and now they do. So, this goes back, okay. I forget, I think it was around 2016 or 2017 when they were bringing out the new API classification. And the API, it's a bunch of letters and numbers and they don't make any sense, but whatever that one is at the time, that tells you if an oil can be put in your engine or not. So you don't have to try to memorize things like, well, it can be a 30 weight or it can't be a 30 weight or it can be this. You just look at the back of a bottle, and if it meets that number and letter combination, you can use that oil in that engine. It's a way to simplify all of that confusing stuff. I had been following that for years. That would change maybe once every decade or so. And then in 16 or 17, Chevron contacted me and said, we're putting together a campaign to try to educate people about the API. And I said, oh, okay. I said, why? Nobody's ever done that before. Doesn't seem to be a big issue. And they said, well, you're right, but it's going to be because for the first time ever now, there's going to be 2 APIs in the industry. The engines had changed so much that the new oils that they were making specifically for those new engines, they didn't believe would offer the proper protection on the older engines. So they had to come up with two API classifications, which has really confused a lot of people, including service managers. So they hired me, and I went around to truck shows and just did seminars on trying to help people understand why we had to and what it meant. Now, to make it even more confusing, they're paying me to kind of give the official answer, which is you shouldn't use these new oils in these old engines. That's why they have the two APIs. Okay, I'll say that because I know that's what's in the book and that's what even the OEMs recommend. I get that. So it's not like you're paying me to say something I don't believe. I believe that you're right. The OEMs say this, everybody says this. And I even warned them ahead of time. I said, later on in that same day, I may be up on that same stage talking about using these oils in older engines to get better fuel economy. And we know we might be taking a risk. But that's what we do. That's how we prove these things. That's how we learn. We have to make mistakes. We don't know where the limit is unless we break the limit. I mean, I really couldn't tell you what the lightest weight oil we could get away with on an engine is unless we decided to run one until we toasted it. You know, what if we tried a 20 weight oil? Well, what would happen? Well, it would probably burn some oil, but would it run? Well, of course it would run. How long would it run? I don't know. Would it only go 800,000 miles instead of 1 million? See how hard some of this stuff would be to prove?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, I'm just going to keep on watching it then and tracking it and see if we don't, as it continues to break in a little bit, all the new components and everything break in a little bit, start coming up. And then I'll maybe look at going back to a 30 weight, try to find that full synthetic. I wanted to find something where, being down in Atlanta, I wasn't going to be able to get my services done and up in that area, and I wanted to be where I could go to TA Petro and get my get the truck serviced when it needed it.
Rotella kind of gets kicked around because it's the number one oil, always has been. So a lot of times, any company that makes it to the top all of a sudden becomes evil somehow. Oh, Rotella, that cheap ass crap. Oh, really? No, it's the opposite. This is a really, really good oil, shockingly good oil, because I used to kind of have that same attitude because I had heard it so often. I didn't, other than hearing it, I didn't have any proof. Well, once I started to understand oils and started looking at it, I'm like, I'm not sure. I've said many times I've been approached by oil companies. I will not partner with one. And the reason is I can't come up with a good enough reason why I would pick one over another. So why would I partner with one and then be expected to kind of only really talk about that one? Well, but I don't want to because I can't find one good enough or different enough that it would stand out. I'm sure I could run Shell Rotella all day long. I could run Delvac and be just fine. I could go get a high-end boutique oil like Royal Purple and rave about it. I used to because I thought it was really good. And then I kind of had to ask myself that question, why? Why do you think this? Where's the proof?
Jim Fowler told me your story about that at the truck show. He said Kevin used to run it, and then he's like, it ain't really doing me anything. So he got off of it. My son's really big into Royal Purple, and so we had that conversation.
Well, it was a great oil, but could I really prove that it was better? Well, we got some better fuel economy, but we went from standard to synthetic, so there were some other changes at the same time. I can also say this, it's really pretty.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It's right up there with nice chrome helping your fuel mileage.
Right, exactly. But I had to be honest with myself after a while and say, I keep saying this oil's really better, and I've convinced myself that it is. But did I ever really stop to say why, and have I really proven it, or is it just as good as any other full synthetic? And then I tried Schaefer for a year, and with an idea that maybe I would partner with Schaefer. They approached me. Great oil, great company, loved the people. I think it's an amazing company. Royal Purple was the same. Royal Purple was the guy that owned it was my business partner in my accounting company. I mean,
Wow.
that's
Didn't realize that.
yeah, that's how much I believed in that company. I approached the guy who owned it, and he was a CPA, and I really wanted somebody with those kind of credentials on the back end if I was going to grow that idea. So I partnered with him. The guy was a brilliant businessman, and I kind of convinced myself that this was such a great oil, and it was. Just there's a lot of great oils, though, and I can't figure out how to say, yeah, this one is absolutely better than that one. So I just decided because of that, I'm just not going to partner with anybody on this one.
Right. Well, Kevin, thank you for the guidance. I'll just try to relax with it and not get too lost in the details, but also, I'll just keep tracking it and maybe give you a call back and look at it in a few more weeks.
It's trying to find that weird balance, and like I said, it's what I think made Todd Amon so successful. He's one of the few people I know. I don't even know if I got to the point telling that story. He's one of the few people I know that he can see the big picture so farther out even than I can. And when I talk to him, I'm just, almost awed by his vision. And he thinks like I do in that mode, really big picture and more out into the future and vision. But then I've watched him work down to the tiniest little detail about everything in his business. And I think, how does he balance all that and do both? I know people who are really good at either one, very few people who are good at both. And I think the better we can get, if we can, at working at our weakness without obsessing over it. I know I need to get a little better at detail stuff, but I can't obsess over it because I'll lose the magic of my big picture thinking. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And
well, that's definitely something I got to always work on.
I do too. And trying to find that balance. I can get lost in my big picture thinking all day long. But once in a while, I gotta at least try to think about the details.
And I can get lost in the details and lose sight of the big picture if I'm not cognizant of it. Like this is really, really important because I love the details and geeking out on the spreadsheets. And I got my scan gun came in a few weeks ago, and I got me a little spreadsheet here on the truck on a clipboard that I check about 15 or 18 components around every day. After you said that's the tool you use most when you take your road trips is that heat gun, and I'm checking them. So it's really cool with such a simple 3 minutes of shooting and writing down temperatures. And you can see trend lines. Yeah. I mean, I got it on paper. It's such an easy tool to use, and even easier than using the air gauge on the tires. I can
much
shoot
easier.
The tires and get a consistency on them.
Yeah. And you can see it now that you're doing it. You know how fast you would spot any kind of a problem.
Right.
It would be so obvious to you that something changed and went wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad to be using that.
Excellent. All right. Good stuff.
Call you back in a few weeks.
Sounds good. I will look forward to it.
Bye
we
now.
are going to wrap this up, and we are going to be back in just minutes with the Beckett's and Rolling Toe. In fact, let me let them know that they can get their show up and running. So don't go away. We will be back. It takes less than 5 minutes for us to make this handoff here. And then remember within 15 minutes after the Beckett's end, we'll be switching over to Twitter, X, Spaces, whatever we're going to be calling that. Hopefully I've got the audio issue fixed, but I'm not confident that I do. We'll see. So you might want to plan to come over to Twitter if you have both apps today. Not confident that I got it. We'll be back tomorrow with the free-for-all and trucking technology and efficiency as well. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.